Olá, senhoras e senhores, eu sou o professor Ricardo Brito e é um prazer estar aqui junto com vocês para este que é o último dia da Global Management Week 2023. Os temas deste ano são Globalization Shift, que foi discutido no primeiro dia, Climate Changes, painel de ontem, e AI Impacts on Companies and Carreiras, tema de discussão com especialistas que você acompanha a partir de agora. Lembrando que se você ainda não enviou sua pergunta antecipadamente, você pode fazer isso através do chat. E as inscrições para participar da competição de projetos de inteligência artificial estão abertas. Você precisa montar o seu grupo e participar desse desafio que tem prêmios de mais de $200 mil em bolsas de estudos para programas executivos. Veja detalhes e premiações no regulamento da competição, cujo prazo de inscrição vai até o dia 6 de outubro. Para o dia de hoje, temos 4 convidados especiais que irão falar sobre as transformações provocadas pelo avanço da inteligência artificial nas empresas e como isso tem transformado os negócios e as carreiras. Temos conosco o professor Julian Espinosa, da California State University em Northridge. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much for being with us. O professor Julian é fundador do podcast Participe Digital, cofundador da CISO e professor adjunto da California State University em Northridge. Agradeço muito também pela presença hoje conosco da professora Astrid Kiel, diretora de programas de MBA da University of Livonia, na Califórnia. Ela é PhD em Business e Marketing e possui grande experiência acadêmica nessa área. O professor Ai Ren, da State University of New York, também está conosco. Muito obrigado pela sua participação. Thank you very much for your participation, Professor Ai Ren. O professor Ai Ren é PhD em Matemática, com pesquisa na área de Learning Machine e IoT. E por fim teremos conosco o professor Terence Tse. Thank you very much, Professor Terence, for being with us. Professor Terence Tse é doutor em administração e professor na Rhodes International Business School de Londres, e ele é também cofundador e diretor executivo da Nexus Frontier Tech, uma empresa de tecnologia sediada em Londres, especializada no desenvolvimento e integração de soluções de IA. Ele é também conselheiro de negócio e coautor da AI Republic, Building the Nexus Between Humans and Intelligent Automation, um best-seller internacional da Amazon. Vamos começar o nosso dia de hoje com o professor Ren, e antes de falarmos sobre assuntos mais complexos, aplicações práticas, vamos começar do básico. Professor Terence, how can we define artificial intelligence in the context of the recent wave of generative AI?
Hi, I would like to explain a few terminologies that is really hot and trendy right now. For example, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. Let's start with machine learning. So machine learning usually are more like providing projections, predictions when we feed a model or an algorithm some data. And the interesting thing is the more we feed them, and the more capability that this algorithm can give us better estimation. Within the machine learning, actually, we have supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. It depends on how much the expertise in this task involved in this algorithm design. So this machine learning is a subset like this. And within the machine learning, there's another subset that's called deep learning. In general, deep learning studies neural networks. And it provides conditional or unconditional relationship between the nodes, just like to study how our brain cell works. So we can tell machine learning is bigger and its subset includes deep learning. So actually, the artificial intelligence is a bigger set that contains machine learning. And also it has some other components, such as natural language processing. Well, for example, it is one of the functions that ChatGPT has. Another example is like image recognition. So we see those examples everywhere. So one of the famous examples is in the hospital, doctors will use those kind of AI application or tool to help them as a second opinion to read X-ray images or MRI images. For example, a patient, do they have lung cancer or any shadow within the image? those kind of AI tools can help them. Yes, this is part of artificial intelligence application. And you can see AI actually is the biggest site that includes all those components. So this leads to my preferred definition about artificial intelligence. Of course, there are many currently, different people have different suggestions or recommendations. But my preferred is artificial intelligence should be at least matching the capacity of a human being.
Thanks, Professor Ren. Thank you very much. A AI é provavelmente a inovação tecnológica mais disruptiva da nossa geração. Uma tecnologia em rápida evolução com grande potencial para tornar os trabalhadores mais produtivos, as empresas mais eficientes, estimular inovações em novos produtos, serviços e, no final, elevar o padrão de vida das pessoas. No entanto, algumas pessoas compreendem que a IA é essencialmente diferente na natureza de todas as tecnologias que os humanos criaram até hoje. Enquanto avanços tecnológicos anteriores na automação tendiam a fazer tarefas rotineiras, a IA tem o potencial de automatizar tarefas não rotineiras. Tendo em vista essa problemática, eu gostaria de pedir ao professor Julian uma avaliação geral desse cenário. Ok? Hello, Professor Julian. How do you evaluate this scenario? What kinds of risks and opportunities AI poses for companies and workers?
You know, I'm very bullish on AI. What it really comes down to is that this is a paradigm shift. I don't know if this is the biggest disruptor of our lifetime, within our lifetime, but it's definitely a disruptor, and it's definitely a paradigm shift. I always like to look at history and look back and say, what happened in history and where is evidence that we can glean from this kind of information? So one of my favorite examples specifically is the automobile industry. At some point, we transported ourselves through horse and carriage, and horses moved us around. The fuel for the horse and the fuel for the transportation was hay. So when automobiles first hit the roads, well, we didn't even have roads, we just had dirt. When they hit for the first time, that created a big paradigm shift because we no longer needed horses. We didn't need carriages. So what industries did we no longer need? We didn't need people to tend to horses anymore. We didn't need the hay industry as much as we needed it back then. We didn't need people to clean up the droppings of the animals on the streets. There were so many different industries that were disrupted when horse and carriage were removed out of the ecosystem when it came to transportation. Now, the automobile industry, how many jobs did it create? How many new things did it do? So I think this is the same thing with AI. It is a paradigm shift. It is changing things. With the jobs being lost, there is new jobs. The question becomes, is there a delta? What is the delta? Is the delta greater or less, right? Are there more new jobs or are there less new jobs? So that all will be said. I think today where we are, and I like to live in practicality, is that AI is going to be probably replacing jobs, but it will also be adding jobs. You can't also use AI and completely remove the human out of it because it is not there yet, and I don't know if it'll ever be there, but it needs humans. Without it, it's not as efficient.
Thanks, Professor Julian. And for you, Professor Terence, in the same context, what would you recommend for companies and managers to take care of their business and their workers?
That is a very good question. The reasons why I say it's a very good question is simply where in my experience working with clients on AI, the first step they almost jump into is to figure out, okay, what are the things that what are the business propositions we can actually use AI for to make to make the highest return given the latest technologies. Now, it sounds rational with that, but there are two fundamental problems, which I think are the wrong first steps, if you were to ask me. The first is one should never jump into the most complex technology straight away, because complex technologies is very, very difficult to implement, very, very difficult to actually get it working. especially when we're talking about putting it into an organizational setting. And the second thing, I think is important is that when it comes to thinking about what kind of results one can get from the process, is to think about how you can quantify the results. And therefore, our recommendations to the clients is that you should not actually use AI especially when this is the first time, on growth, on improving your revenue. Instead, use AI for the purpose of cost cutting. Why? Simple, because you can measure cost savings a lot easier than the potential growth in revenue that you can make as a result of using AI. So I think these are the two most important first steps managers need to think about when it comes to taking on AI.
Thanks, Professor Tse. Bem, nós sabemos que as empresas estão adotando a IA não apenas porque podem, mas porque elas precisam. A IA pode afetar significativamente a competição entre empresas, opondo organizações que são adotantes precoces de novas tecnologias a organizações mais conservadoras. Alguns estudos mostram que as corporações maiores são as mais propensas a adotar tecnologias de IA em seus processos, bem como alguns setores especificamente, como o setor de informações, serviços, gestão e finanças, são esses setores mais propensos a adotar a tecnologia de inteligência artificial. Então eu gostaria de perguntar ao professor Tse como uma empresa pode acelerar a adoção de inteligência artificial para se manter competitiva. Professor Tse, in your opinion, how can a company overcome eventual barriers and speed up the AI adoption in order to stay competitive?
Thank you so much again. So, as I said earlier, one of the keys to success in putting AI into business is by being able to measure the return on investment. So, if you look at the very simple formula, right? Return on investment. The key to success is to make sure that you can measure the return, right? Because the investment, you know how much you are going to pay for the development anyway. So, figuring out, having a stronger, more confidence in establishing the return is a critical thing. Another thing that one should need to think about is on the investment side, and that is instead of thinking of investing all your capital money into AI, which results in a huge expenditure. Is there any way you can actually work with your vendors, work with your AI suppliers, and see whether you can actually pay for things over time? In this very case, you can actually use the future benefits you generate from AI in order to pay for the AI services. So, I think that is one of the key things we would recommend to to our clients when it comes to financial considerations. But when it comes to organizational cultural barriers, we have seen a lot of them. The way we would recommend, everyone, every company to at least think about, right, if not even try, is this. Usually what you will find is that the middle managers, they are the one who are a lot more keen to use AI or for the purpose of at least automation, because they are actually overlooking the processes, the workflows, day in, day out. One of the biggest problems, believe it or not, still is that, when it comes to the higher echelon, the higher ranking officers, especially when it comes to the C-suites, they would have a lot more resistance. They would have a lot more hesitations when it comes to using AI. Not least because they're not closers to the actual business processes, but also the fact that a lot of the time what we find is that they are actually they have a less understanding of what AI can and cannot do. So the way we do it in order to actually overcome this barrier is to make sure that at the very, very start of identifying AI projects within the business is to invite all the C-suites people, right? Give them a workshop to actually, one, educate them, get them to actually understand better as to what AI is, what it can and cannot do, and two, just as important, basically getting them to actually have their buy-ins so that they would be at least, provide the blessing necessary for the middle managers to actually crack along, get going with implementing AI. It sounds very, backwards. It sounds very it's almost like dinosaurs, right? But this is what it is. And we have found that workshops to be a very, very useful way in getting the confidence of the C-suites to to put more faith into any of the AI projects that the lower echelons will be putting in.
What about you, Professor Julian? What is your opinion about that?
It's a great question. So when it comes to removing the barriers of AI and adopting it sooner than later, everything starts with leadership, right? So if your leadership isn't spending time in not educating its staff, not creating exercises to be able to show what's possible, then that's going to be a big barrier. I think the barrier is leadership. You got to have a leader who is using the technology and showing its employees how to use those technologies. And there's different things that can be done. Once a manager or a leader of a company has started to implement those things, they can implement exercises, workshops with their company and with their employees to show them what can be done.
Thanks, Professor Julian. Agora eu gostaria de perguntar à professora Astrid quais seriam os usos e aplicações mais comuns da IA no campo de marketing, que é a área dela. Professor Astrid, based on your understanding, your experience of AI applications in marketing, what would be, in your opinion, the typical use and applications in the field of marketing for artificial intelligence?
Thank you so much for having me. Very interesting area, of course, big growth area in AI. Though it has been extensively used in marketing, specifically in online retailing and in advertising, online content creation, social media. So in online retailing, we see already the use of AI in all sorts of chatbot applications. I'm sure you've chatted with a chatbot, and those are not just automated systems, but also enhanced by AI. And then we have those personalization systems. Those are the ones that recommend products to you or personalize the website to be suited to your particular liking or your device and so on and so forth. So with recommendation systems, they use your past purchase history, your browsing history, your wish list to recommend future products that you may perhaps enjoy based not just on your own purchase history, but also other customers who are similar to you. So AI has also already had those applications. You also see specifically on certain online retailers that the pricing is very dynamic, right? Dynamic pricing. Again, this is influenced by AI based on available stock demand and other factors. So you see specifically, for example, on Amazon, that the prices vary widely. Even within a day, you can see the prices moving around. So there's already this big application in online retailing. And there's another big application with social media and content management and content creation. So you see, for example, a lot of the Google ads and other ad systems such as Bing, they have help for you in terms of keyword research, in terms of analysis of competitors, in terms of content that you should potentially consider creating a blog out of. So there's a SEO research and so on that is assisted with AI that can help marketers better communicate their value to customers. You may also have seen in Hootsuite or other social media platforms that they provide advice on when to best schedule your posts. And again, this is another sort of AI application.
Thank you. And in your opinion, what are the potential challenges of AI application in the field of marketing?
So one of the challenges, of course, is you may have noticed that I was talking about online retailing, online content creation, online advertising, those industries that were generated or adopted the online environment early on have an inherent advantage in terms of the application of AI compared to other industries who may be more traditional, may not have that online exposure, or smaller businesses that don't have that infrastructure. One of the biggest barriers to adopting AI is actually the lack of infrastructure. And this can be hardware, software, human know-how that is able to implement and make the best use of AI. There's some other barriers that are kind of not just marketing specific, but are more widespread, I would say. And that's the issue of data. AI is best performing and learns best, of course, when you have vast trove of high quality data. So it's not just about the amount of data, it's also about the quality of the data and the recency of the data. So feeding in, collecting, developing the systems so that you have them going into your AI to learn is one of the other challenges that many businesses are currently facing. Associated with this data is the concerns regarding privacy. And in certain countries already, there are regulations related to privacy issues with AI. So if I recall correctly, Italy has banned ChatGPT due to privacy concerns. And of course, that's a potential that we need to keep an eye out in terms of regulation, which typically lags technology. So this illustrates some of the risk that companies are exposing themselves to when they are adopting AI. The AI generations of, say, logos, content, and so on are not protectable at the current moment. So the Copyright Office says that a logo generated by AI, well, you can't protect that. An image created by AI is not protected, which means that you can use it, but so can your competitor or anybody else. So that poses challenges in terms of protecting your brand identity and protecting your marketing assets if you're making great use of these AI products. Another concern that is not necessarily a business concern because they're really concerned about legal issues is the ethical concern. Many of these AI systems are trained by scraping data, and some of that data are images by artists or voices by artists and actors, and we're scraping that data to create similar, inspired art, voices, acts, and so on. But those original artists are not getting compensated because individuals and companies are using these AI systems. So there's kind of this long-term concern as to whether AI will end up eroding the creativity because artists are not being compensated for their work. So that is kind of more of a long-term and ethical concern that may not be the most top of mind, perhaps, for many businesses. Also, kind of now diving in a little bit deeper into marketing, some of the content issues that may be relevant is currently Google is watching out for AI content. And that means in terms of SEO, in terms of search engine optimization, content created by AI is penalized. So content created by humans is elevated in terms of search engine optimization. So there's always this advantage in elevating your content by first using some AI, but then adding that personal human touch so that it ranks well on search engines. I'm trying to think of some other challenges. Some other challenges in adopting AI, of course, is the potential lack of connection with customers. AI really excels at the kind of big data, big aspect of it, and less so at developing those personal connections that are so valuable to customers. So that may be another element as to why it's not the most adopted, perhaps, in certain areas of marketing.
Thank you so much, Professor Astrid. Bem, nós sabemos que o impacto da inteligência artificial no trabalho pode variar de acordo com o tipo de tarefa que o trabalhador precisa realizar. Em algumas carreiras, por exemplo, a IA pode automatizar uma função anteriormente desempenhada pelo trabalhador, enquanto que em outras carreiras, a IA pode aumentar a produtividade desse trabalhador. Então eu gostaria de conversar com o professor Julian sobre as mudanças esperadas do ponto de vista de recursos humanos. Professor Julian, once more, thank you for being with us. How can an HR manager evaluate job positions and plan for the expected changes?
Hiring is one of my favorite subjects. Steve Jobs talks about this a lot. Hiring is one of the most important skills that you can have as a leader of a company, as a founder. And so how to introduce AI and hiring, I think is beautiful. It makes so much sense to me. So what I love about that is whenever I hire a new candidate or whenever I'm interviewing candidates, we always provide an exercise. Whether that exercise is something written, whether it's something that happens during an interview process, we always do exercises. We want to see how people think. We want to see how people would act in a particular scenario and what kind of skills and knowledge that they can bring. Maybe we're trying to hire and we're realizing that we're looking for someone that we didn't even realize we wanted, right? Giving people opportunities to being able to show what they're really capable is beautiful. So that's hiring across the board. Now, when it comes to AI, just add that in. So when your team is onboarding or you're looking to identify candidates, provide an exercise. This happens a lot with software engineers. Software engineers are given a task and the person is monitoring that task at hand. So that would look like something like a screen share, right? You're sharing a screen, you give a scenario or a task to a candidate and you ask them to use AI, a chatbot, to essentially come back with you and you want to monitor their prompts. I think the big thing in AI right now is prompts. Are you having the most effective types of prompts? What types of prompts are getting you close and closer to the best result that you're looking for? So monitoring that process. We actually haven't even done that yet, but as this gets bigger, that's something I'm going to start implementing as well.
Thanks, Professor Julian. And for you, Professor Terence, what would you say to an HR manager, someone who leads teams and needs to prepare them for the expected changes?
I believe that AI is in itself is just a technology, is nothing more than a tool. It is essentially a hammer, like a hammer by in itself does not really do anything or doesn't even work, right? In order for the hammer to actually perform its function, its main function, i.e. hitting a nail, you do need a human being to actually use it properly. Not me, I'm not a DIY man, but in the hands of someone who is more skillful than me, the hammer works perfectly well. Same thing applies to AI. In order to get the most benefits out of AI in business, the key is to think through what are the things that you can perform well with the tool, the AI, the algorithm, and what are the things you can actually do well with human beings. So, for instance, if you are if you are using AI for a document reading, okay, what happens if it is a document that is fairly easy for AI to read, right? So that you can use AI to read. However, if there is a document that is not really standard, right? Exceptions. AI, no matter how you trained it, you won't be able to take in a lot of exception, or at least not in a cost-effective manner. And therefore, what you should be doing is using humans to make sure that, one, the exceptions are taken care of because AI cannot. And two, humans will be able to teach the AI what we call data annotation to improve its ability so that next time when it sees sort of exceptions, it will be able to actually process it by itself. As I said, the key then is to make sure that you have got humans working alongside the algorithms to make sure that you can reap the full benefits, and that is what people call humans in the loop. And I do strongly believe that human in the loop is one of the most underrated, one of the least understood aspects when it comes to putting AI into business. Yet it is one of the best way to guaranteed return and the benefits you can extract from using AI within a business setting.
Thanks, Professor Tse. Coming back to you, Professor Julian, what would be your recommendation for an entrepreneur? How can an entrepreneur get involved in this new chapter of the business reality?
When it comes to startups, you're in the building phase. There's so many things that you need to do as a startup to get things right. And with that, there's a lot of thinking that has to go into it. The beautiful thing about AI is it does a lot of the thinking for you. One of my favorite things has been when I'm onboarding a new role or a person to our team, asking the AI ChatGPT, I just ask it, hey, I want to onboard this particular job role within this type of company. Can you give me a rubric on the best way to onboard this person? And it gave us like 10 things on the best way to onboard it. And we literally used that fabric and we literally used the foundation of how it asked us to do it. And it was perfect. It was absolutely incredible. I've used it to do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I had it do a SWOT analysis on our business. And then we had a conversation around the weaknesses and the threats. And it was a whole conversation about that. We even talked about it with an investor about what the threats were. I've used it for a sales strategy. I'm like, hey, what are some potential sales strategy to grow a business like this, right? It does a lot of the brain power thinking for you. It doesn't execute, right? So you still need to be able to execute, but it does a lot of the thinking for you. And I think that's what speeds a lot of things up. I can get so much more done in a day when I'm using it. And that's the beauty behind AI and startups.
Nós sabemos que as empresas que adotam a IA estão fazendo isso por muitos motivos. Melhorar a qualidade do seu produto ou serviço, para atualizar processos já existentes, automatizar processos já existentes, enfim. Pensando em uma empresa que já está dando seus primeiros passos para adotar a IA, eu gostaria agora de perguntar para o professor Ren o que ele recomendaria para um empreendedor. Professor Ren, what would be your recommendation for an entrepreneur, for a startup CEO, someone who is starting a company to enjoy these benefits of the AI?
In terms of advice or suggestions for startups, I would say I have two parts. The first one will be what's the routine or procedure that, in my opinion, a startup should think about. So the first step is to define the market. So as an owner of a startup, I would say they need to think about who they are helping, who they are interacting with, who they are working with. So by looking at this market, they have good understanding about their market share and what's the potential revenue and all the details they're probably going to want to know. And the second stage is once they have their customer or market defined, they should be able to tell what kind of problem they're dealing with. So what kind of problem they are trying to solve, what kind of service they are trying to provide. So with this big question mark in their head, they can further truncate this big problem into small pieces, then they can be able to find solutions to each small chunk or maybe the whole piece. So after they have the brainstorm, say ideas, solutions, they should start work on the real solutions. Then after the solution is done, they should have the, say, prototype or demo. After this demo or prototype is ready, they need to do testing or boosting about this product. It's not really just running it on their server, but also send it to customers and find real feedbacks. So after this time-consuming procedure and also even costly procedure, they will really receive feedback from their customers. Then they can do adjustment and even fix things they find in this procedure. So sometimes they have to go back to step 2. Maybe something's wrong with the problem they defined, or maybe step 3, the solution they designed were not perfect. There are things to be twisted or to be fixed. So this is the routine that I suggest.
Thanks, Professor Ren. Pensando nesse contexto que estamos discutindo hoje, Precisamos nos colocar também no lugar de um jovem gerente, alguém que está iniciando sua carreira, por exemplo, em marketing, e se defronta com a necessidade de se adaptar à nova geração de inteligência artificial generativa dentro da sua área. E para isso eu vou puxar aqui para a conversa a professora Astrid. Professor Astrid, please, what would you suggest for managers who need to prepare for this new area that AI has brought to all of us?
I was watching a video a few days ago, and it postulated that the ones most at risk were the ones starting their careers, because the power of AI is in the automation and kind of doing sometimes the simpler things that are often given to younger or newer individuals in the workforce. So to me, the biggest thing I recommend is to experiment with all of these tools. Experiment, experiment, experiment. Many of these paid tools that are actually incredibly expensive, which is another barrier to adoption, they have free trials. So make use of those free trials to really play around with these systems, see what they can do, see what they cannot do. That is the first thing I recommend. There's also a couple of training, or I wouldn't say training, but good literature provided by Google and Microsoft that is useful to keep on top of, to know about the latest developments, know what they're working on, what is coming up. That's also a really good idea to be on the cutting edge. The third aspect is to know a little bit how these systems work. These systems work best when you have more and more precise prompts. So if you just ask, for example, the free version of ChatGPT, tell me about computers, well, it's not going to be super valuable. So the more precise you can get in your prompts and the questions that you pose to these systems, the better the results you can obtain. So you can specify the sources of material that these systems look into, and even specify the time period, so on and so forth, to get better outputs from these systems. The other aspect is to recognize the weaknesses of these systems. Of course, I'm talking about today. Things may change in the future, but currently these systems are really not that good with creativity. So working on one's creativity, on developing tools for developing creativity is something that is recommended, as well as developing that human connection. Most of these tools are not that great with developing human connections. So developing those soft skills in customer service and dealing with other individuals, I think will be valued by customers in the long term. And the last one is really developing the fundamentals. Really know what marketing theory is about. Really know what your customer base, your target market, your segment, what your brand really is about. Because AI really isn't going to be able to answer that in a forward-looking method. So understanding the fundamentals is also really crucial if, say, an AI system is shut down overnight, for example, for some regulatory purpose, or because it's a startup and poof, it goes away. You need to be able to do those things on your own, even if you're a little slower, even if you're not as efficient as an AI system. It is good for you to have those fundamentals. There's an increased use of applicant tracking systems. They're referred to as ATS systems in hiring processes. And these ATS systems that used to be just kind of rather simple are now being augmented with AI. And learning how those systems work is particularly important so that your resume, your cover letter, and your qualifications are appreciated by those who may be hiring you. This does not mean attempting to game the system. I recently read an article about certain applicants using white font to put in the keywords from the job description. Guess what? That doesn't work so well most of the times, because if you don't actually have those attributes and those skills, well, all that it will succeed in doing is showing that you're not the most ethical person, and that is not the way to get hired. So although you want to learn how these systems work, don't try to abuse them, because I don't believe that on the long term it will benefit applicants. So I think that's my advice. Hopefully it's good.
Thank you. What about you, Professor Terence? What would be your final recommendation for a young manager or entrepreneur?
The way AI has been developing is that, in business, is you have to actually custom make the AI, the algorithm for each of the business. Any off-the-shelf AI technologies right now has not really got the necessary accuracy needed for business to make it like a cost effective. Second, off-the-shelf technology is very difficult to be embedded into legacy IT infrastructure. So up to now, it is all about, custom made. However, with the arrival of generative AI, or simply Gen AI, one of the surprising development is that Gen AI is gradually, because of the way it is because of the fact that it is trained on a huge amount of data, it is becoming something called the foundation model, which basically means that, going forward, for any entrepreneurs to be thinking about, entering the IT scene, right? One thing to think about is if Gen AI can actually serve as a big model, right, for a business, right? The fact is this: one is that custom-made model will be very, very different, in a sense that instead of building a bespoke system for a client, what you will be doing is taking on the Gen AI and then reshaping a little bit of it, right? And therefore, allowing it to create an algorithm to perform a very specific task. This, in the IT, in the AI world, is called prompting. So you can essentially prompt a big foundation model that is already trained for the purpose of completing different tasks. What I think entrepreneurs should actually think about, at the very least, is, think much less about, okay, I am here to actually help companies to build a big model, thinking about what kind of big data they will be needing in order to train a model for them. Instead, I think it will be a very, very beneficial to explore, okay, how can I leverage Gen AI as a foundation model, and what kind of services I can provide when it comes to prompting, fine-tuning the foundation model in order to help business clients to succeed. I think this requires a different understanding of how AI works, and two, it also requires entrepreneurs, people who are thinking of doing a startup, trying to offer new services, thinking about how, what are the new possibilities, what are the new business opportunities out there when it comes to this. And I think, the sales effort will be very different from the traditional bespoke approach to AI. The funding possibilities will also be very, very different. It essentially opens up a very, very different, if not a bigger world of AI possibilities for entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much, Professor Terence. De fato, temos um cenário muito desafiador para o mundo dos negócios e para as carreiras. Certamente, nos próximos anos, algumas profissões vão desaparecer, à medida que inúmeras outras vão surgir. E o nosso papel como professores, pesquisadores, profissionais, que queremos nos manter destacados nos mercados, é estarmos atentos enquanto navegamos nesses novos mares. E eu gostaria de, mais uma vez, agradecer a todos os professores que participaram do nosso painel de hoje. E antes de irmos para o nosso breve intervalo, quero mais uma vez convidar vocês a participar do nosso desafio gerencial. Acesse o link na descrição para conhecer o regulamento, monte seu grupo e apresente seu projeto de uso da inteligência artificial nos negócios. Voltamos em alguns instantes para a nossa sessão de perguntas e respostas. Olá, estamos de volta aqui para a sessão de perguntas e respostas, agora deste que é o terceiro e último painel de discussões da Global Management Week 2023. No primeiro dia nós discutimos, você lembra, as perspectivas atuais da globalização. Falamos sobre as mudanças climáticas ontem e hoje estamos tentando entender quais são os potenciais impactos da nova geração de inteligência artificial nos negócios. Enfim, 3 temas complexos, importantes, para os quais tivemos a felicidade de contar com o apoio de grandes especialistas para poder dar conta aqui desses debates. Agradeço então mais uma vez a presença dos keynote speakers de hoje e principalmente agradeço a sua participação, você que nos acompanha pelo nosso canal do YouTube. Vamos começar respondendo aqui as perguntas enviadas antecipadamente e depois vou tentar chegar nas perguntas enviadas via chat. O tempo é curto, mas nós vamos lá, combinado? A primeira pergunta é do Arthur Nicolino. Ele diz o seguinte, com a rápida evolução da inteligência artificial impactando as operações, as estratégias das empresas, quais são as perspectivas e requisitos das carreiras profissionais em diferentes setores? Essa é uma pergunta parecida com a do Augusto França, Giovanni Adiel, Bianca Aquino, a quem eu também agradeço pela participação aqui com a gente. Olha, em maior ou menor grau, eu diria que todas as profissões vão ser impactadas por esse novo perfil de inteligência artificial generativa. A diferença estará na capacidade e agilidade de cada profissional em compreender antes os usos potenciais e conseguir usar melhor. A inteligência artificial, nesse sentido, é como uma nova ferramenta, uma ferramenta que não existia e agora existe. Quem souber antes da existência dessa ferramenta e souber usá-la melhor, vai se destacar no mercado de trabalho. A empresa que aprender a usar essa ferramenta antes dos concorrentes vai obter uma vantagem competitiva. E o gestor que souber conduzir as suas equipes para o uso adequado dessas novas ferramentas vai ser um gestor valioso para a empresa onde ele trabalha, vendo a sua empresa decolar. Em grande medida, este debate serve para isso. Nós queremos ampliar o conhecimento sobre as possíveis aplicações de inteligência artificial nas empresas e fazemos isso por meio de debates com especialistas, como o que tivemos agora há pouco, com o debate com os participantes deste painel de discussões que estamos tendo agora e com a competição de estudos de caso, cujas inscrições se encerram no dia 6 de outubro. Ao responder aí as próximas perguntas, eu vou tentar dar alguns exemplos mais concretos para vocês, tá bom? Bom, seguindo adiante aqui, a Desirê faz uma questão específica sobre a profissão dela, mas que eu penso que o raciocínio vale para todas as profissões do pessoal aqui no nosso bate-papo. Ela pergunta o seguinte, como que a inteligência artificial pode me auxiliar na função de advogada nos próximos anos? Desirê, eu acho que você pode brilhar na sua carreira, pode obter resultados incríveis se usar bem as ferramentas de inteligência artificial. Elas são realmente espetaculares para elaborar textos, buscar exemplos, fazer comparações, um monte de coisas da sua área. Mas como em qualquer outra profissão, é preciso ter muito cuidado, especialmente nesse momento inicial em que a ferramenta ainda está aprendendo. Já houve casos registrados na imprensa, divulgados por aí, em que a ferramenta confundiu leis com projetos de leis, e sugeriu, então, aos advogados argumentos usando leis que não existiam. Já houve casos até em que a ferramenta mencionou casos como jurisprudência, como se fosse real, mas que posteriormente percebeu-se que se tratava apenas de um caso hipotético criado para fins didáticos. Então, as ferramentas de IA foram criadas muito recentemente, ainda apresentam falhas, mas estão sendo aprimoradas e vale a pena usar, aprender a usar e usar com cautela. Tá ok? Desirê. A Célia Samuel Manjati levanta uma questão ética muito importante. Como que as ferramentas podem garantir que suas implementações de IA sejam éticas e evitem discriminação? Como as empresas podem garantir, perdão, né? A exemplo do que eu comentei agora com a Desirê, agora há pouco, Célia, a empresa deve supervisionar o trabalho da IA. As ferramentas de IA usam como base o conjunto de conhecimento disponível na internet. Ora, nós sabemos que o conteúdo da internet espelha o pensamento das pessoas, da sociedade como um todo. Embora tenha havido progressos importantes nos últimos anos, nas últimas décadas, o mundo ainda é muito marcado com uma postura preconceituosa contra diferenças de raças, de cor, de religião, contra gênero, contra opção sexual. Isso está refletido nas respostas das ferramentas de IA. Então, as empresas que se valem de IA para prestar variados tipos de serviços precisam estar atentas, pois poderão ser responsabilizadas por eventuais atos lesivos aos interesses de quem se sentir discriminado. E aí, Célia, você vai precisar contratar a Desirê para te ajudar, né? Bom, indo adiante aqui, temos, que o tempo está curto, a Francine Ferraz pergunta o seguinte: como países com menores índices de desenvolvimento podem ser afetados ou se beneficiar pelo desenvolvimento da inteligência artificial? Em relação à profissionalização dentro do contexto da IA, existem oportunidades para pessoas fora dos grandes centros tecnológicos? Olha, Francine, eu penso que uma das grandes vantagens das novas tecnologias é exatamente a sua facilidade de acesso de forma remota. Se você mora no Vale do Silício ou no Vale do Paraíba, seu acesso é o mesmo. Claro que os grandes centros oferecem melhores escolas, já possuem empresas mais antenadas com as mudanças, mas isso pode ser até uma vantagem para você, para a sua empresa, Francine. Aproveite o relativo atraso da sua região, se você tem esse entendimento, e se destaque como uma profissão na sua região, uma profissional na sua região, que traz resultados, tá bem? Sigamos adiante aqui. Giovana Paula Pádula de Paula faz uma pergunta relacionada à formação profissional. Qual será o impacto da inteligência artificial no processo de aprendizado dos futuros profissionais? Bom, eu vejo que o impacto será pelo menos de 3 formas aqui, ó. Primeiro, no desenvolvimento educacional em si, na experiência em sala de aula. O professor vai ter mais ferramentas, poderá dar aulas melhores, trazer mais informações para dentro de sala, com mais exemplos. Segundo, o aluno poderá produzir trabalhos melhores, combinando o que ele aprendeu em sala de aula com o que ele é capaz de produzir com o apoio da inteligência artificial e acrescentando suas próprias conclusões e direcionamentos. E terceiro, no currículo dos programas. É esperado que as instituições de ensino atualizem seus currículos com o objetivo de integrar as variadas aplicações de inteligência artificial nas carreiras profissionais dos seus alunos. O médico tem que ser formado de modo a saber usar bem a inteligência artificial. O advogado, a mesma coisa. O engenheiro, a mesma coisa. O administrador, a mesma coisa. Não se trata de blindar as instituições de ensino contra a invasão da inteligência artificial, e sim de abraçar a IA como ferramenta que já está mudando o mercado de trabalho no mundo todo. Tá bem? Então, tá ok, Giovana? Já aqui, indo adiante, a Maria Clara Ribeiro de Lima faz uma pergunta interessante aqui para nós. Qual será o maior impacto da inteligência artificial em trabalhos que envolvem criatividade? Olha, Maria Clara, nós ainda vamos descobrir quais são as tarefas que serão mais afetadas pelo IA nas empresas. Mas vale a pena comentar aqui que há algo profundamente diferente na revolução provocada pela IA em comparação com os desenvolvimentos tecnológicos anteriores. Enquanto as inovações tecnológicas as anteriores, né, substituíram principalmente tarefas rotineiras, repetitivas, a inteligência artificial generativa tem essa característica de ser útil em atividades não rotineiras, em atividades associadas à criação. E isso é uma mudança em relação a tudo o que estávamos acostumados a ver. A produtividade de setores de criação de textos, imagens, análise de dados, produção, né, de vídeos, processamento de diagnósticos, coisas que as máquinas pareciam estar longe de poder contribuir de forma mais intensa, foram as mais diretamente alcançadas pelo surgimento da IA generativa. As empresas terão, então, a oportunidade de aumentar a sua produtividade com inteligência artificial, separando, destacando pessoas para novas áreas e fortalecendo o trabalho dos funcionários mais afetados. Tá ok? Bom, e agora vamos tentar responder as perguntas enviadas via chat, começando pela pergunta do Décio Júnior. Como que a tecnologia pode ser usada para impulsionar a sustentabilidade? Como a inteligência artificial, a energia renovável e a gestão de recursos dentro das organizações? Olha, Odécio, eu penso que isso vai ajudar o gestor a tomar decisões melhores. A inteligência artificial, ela tem esse papel de, de fornecer mais dados, mais insumos para que o gestor possa tomar decisões que reflitam os interesses estratégicos da organização, que hoje precisam estar alinhados com as ideias da sustentabilidade, tá ok? Décio Júnior, muito obrigado pela sua colaboração aqui. A Angelina Chiambi, ela faz uma pergunta: como a IA está sendo usada para melhorar a experiência do cliente e o atendimento ao cliente? Mas olha, Angelina, a Astrid acabou de responder essa pergunta, não vou ser eu que vou me arriscar a complementar a opinião da professora. Espero que você esteja satisfeito, se não, você dá um alô aqui que a gente ainda tenta complementar alguma coisa. O nosso tempo aqui está estourando. Duas últimas perguntinhas. O Robson Alves pergunta como a IA pode potencializar as estratégias de branding e tornar a comunicação das empresas mais eficiente. Robson, o branding tradicional sempre foi marcado pelas comunicações em larga escala. Era uma peça de comunicação para ser assistida por todo mundo. Eu tenho a impressão que a grande chave do uso da inteligência artificial no branding vai ser exatamente a personalização. A ferramenta aprender com o usuário qual é a comunicação que faz mais efeito com aquele usuário em especial e poder fazer uma comunicação, uma construção do branding adequada ao usuário, ao consumidor, ao alvo da campanha de comunicação. Esse seria o meu palpite principal aqui para você, tá bom, Robson? E, por fim, a nossa última pergunta de hoje, a Marise pergunta: a inteligência artificial requer, quer dizer, ela afirma primeiro, a inteligência artificial requer um investimento considerável por parte da empresa para a sua implementação. Como que as pequenas e médias empresas com menor capital para inovação podem iniciar o processo de adoção de IA? Através de cooperação, formando grupos de empresas, buscando ferramentas que possam ser adquiridas na base do pay-per-use, o que não pode ficar de fora, porque senão ela de pequena vai se tornar inexistente pela competição que vai chegar aí brava com o uso da inteligência artificial em vários setores. Marise, muito obrigado aí pela sua participação. Quero agradecer também a participação da Magda, Fázio, Nayara, Gabriela, Nicolas, Silvia Robles, Francisco Oliveira e vários outros que nos brindaram aí com seus comentários no chat ao longo dessa nossa discussão. Muito obrigado, então, a todos. Estamos encerrando agora a Global Management Week 2023 com 3 dias quentes de debates. Foi um prazer, uma honra ser aqui o anfitrião deste evento. Não se esqueça de assinar a sua lista de presença para obter o seu certificado e eu espero que essas discussões se reflitam em um grande desenvolvimento profissional, acadêmico e pessoal para cada um de vocês. Estou ansioso para vê-los em alguns dos nossos programas ao redor do mundo, seja aqui no Brasil, nos Estados Unidos ou na Europa. Um prazer ter vocês aqui conosco, bons estudos e até breve. Tchau, tchau.